Before time knew the sound of rebellion, before discord, there was only one will: goodwill. It was the will of the Almighty, the singular and perfect course upon which all creation moved. The angels, majestic and radiant, wielded power beyond human comprehension, yet their self-determination was tethered to the singular truth of good. The heavens resounded with harmony. No angel ever pondered another way. Not even one had thoughts of opposition, thoughts of deviation, for all things moved within the confinements of goodwill, an existence that sought not wealth nor power, but the heart of the Creator himself. And among these celestial beings stood one greater than the rest, Lucifer, the morning star. He was the seal of perfection, adorned with wisdom beyond compare, his beauty unmatched. Upon him, the radiance of divine craftsmanship shone like the first light of dawn. But hidden within him lay a potential unspoken, an ability that had never been tested: the power to cultivate his own will. Lucifer, the bearer of divine light, began to observe something that had never been considered: inheritance. He saw that all things belonged to God, yet he too held great authority. The Almighty, in his infinite wisdom, had never ruled with force, but with love. The angels were not bound by chains, yet they never strayed. Why? It was goodwill that bound them, a force unseen, an influence that did not resort to riches or threats, but to pure devotion. They loved God, not for what he had, but for who he was. Yet, as Lucifer gazed upon the heavenly realms, an unfamiliar thought flickered within him. What if there was another way? The thought was subtle at first, but it did not fade. Instead, Lucifer cultivated it, watering it with the seed of his own reasoning. He considered inheritance. If the Father had all things, then why should he, the greatest of all angels, not inherit them as well? He pondered the essence of a will, a formal declaration of intent regarding one's possessions. Yet, what happens when the owner is immortal? What if there was a way to alter the will? And thus, a second will was born. Unlike the goodwill that flowed naturally from the Creator, this new will opposed. It did not submit. It did not align. It stood apart. It questioned. It sought. It desired. Lucifer had fashioned something never before seen: self-will, or rather, free will, a will outside of goodwill. Lucifer, once content with being in God's presence, now longed to own what was his. He did not wish to replace God, for he knew that was impossible. Instead, he wished to possess as God possessed, to be not only the son, but the heir. But therein lay the flaw of his reasoning. Goodwill was not based on ownership, but on relationship. God's power was not in what he had, but in who he was. Yet Lucifer was blind to this truth. His desire grew until it became a doctrine of its own, a creed of inheritance, a gospel of free will. And he was not content to walk this path alone. He began to whisper to others, planting seeds of his newfound philosophy. Why should we serve without reward? Why should we love without inheritance? Are we not worthy of more? A fracture formed within the realm of divine order. Goodwill had never been challenged before, and now, before the Almighty's throne, there stood a being with a will of his own, one against the good. And the Almighty, whose wisdom sees beyond the boundaries of time, looked upon his once perfect creation and spoke. You were the seal of perfection, until iniquity was found in you. The rebellion was swift, the war unspoken, for the Creator had no rival, only a traitor. The moment Lucifer's will departed from goodwill, he fell, like lightning from heaven. He who was the morning star became the prince of darkness. His was no throne, no inheritance, no power of his own, only what he could steal, corrupt, and pervert. The once radiant bearer of light now held only shadow, and in his descent he sought to sow his will among the creation of God, planting in men the same question that had corrupted him. What if there is another way? Thus, the world became a battlefield of wills. The good will which sought to ever guide mankind back to the heart of the Father, and the opposing free will which sought to separate mankind from their Creator. The garden was only the beginning. The seed Lucifer planted in himself, he planted in men through the woman. The choice was no longer between good and evil, but between goodwill and free will. Yet, in the midst of corruption, God had already spoken a testament, a promise written before the foundation of the world, a will that could not be broken. And in time, another morning star would rise, one who would undo the work of the fallen. For where the first Lucifer fell in pride, the second, Christ, would descend in humility. And by his blood, he would sign a new testament, one that no force in heaven or hell could alter. The end is already written. Goodwill shall prevail.